they can just come on in. So the first thing we want to do is do our prayer for study. Everybody turn to the back of your reading guide on page 79. And we will start our time right. Takete. Omnes discipuli. Mali discipuli. No, non est. Non sunt. Okay. Are we ready? Christ, my Lord, the giver of light and wisdom, who opened the eyes of the blind man and transformed the fishermen into wise heralds and teachers of the gospel through the coming of the Holy Spirit, shine also in my mind the light of the grace of the Holy Spirit. Grant me discernment, understanding, and wisdom in learning. Enable me to complete my assignments and to abound in every good work, for to you I give honor and glory. Amen. Most blessed Lord, send the grace of your Holy Spirit on me to strengthen me, that I may learn well the subject I am about to study, and by it become a better person, for your glory, the comfort of my family, and the benefit of your church and our nation. Amen. Welcome, ladies. Yes, we have some different arrangements. The church is doing some sort of craft over there, and I did not want to disturb it and use the table. So I thought it was best left alone. So you'll have to use the very tiny. Although there's a little card table out there that's like a toddler table. I thought that would be adorable, but Emma, I have a lovely paper for you. Thank you very much. Well done, and your ing was perfect.
Which one of them?
Perfectly the right one. Well, I only usually.
There was another one. Thinking about it, they seem a bit suspicious.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's the one. That's the right one.
Yeah, but you didn't mark it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I guess because
I did a question mark because I didn't know whether it was an ink opener. So.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just saw the ing, but I didn't see the question mark, and it was totally good, and so I just kept moving. If you have papers for me, because not everybody had your paper last time, which was fine, I will take them from you. Papers. I am collecting papers. Oh, I'm so sorry. You know what? Just you deal with your mom. If your mom wants you to redo it, like that's between you and your mom. But it's very frustrating. It happens. It's happened to me. Oh, awesome. Thank you. Okay. Is there anybody who's A, expecting something from me you didn't get, or B, has something for me you didn't give me? All right, awesome. I finally remembered to do something. Actually, I think I say finally because it feels like I haven't seen you in a long time because of the break. I forgot to bring this. This is the water clock. I told you that when Socrates was on trial, in Athens, in the court, it was sort of like having an hourglass, only it was a water clock, and so you pour water, as far as I can know, into the top, and then there's a little hole and it runs into the bottom. And when the water runs out, your time is up. And that is all the time that you had to give your defense. You know, today, if you want to, you can just go on and on in court, you know what I mean? Call witnesses, and the trial can go on for days. In Athens, it's like, boom, we're pouring the water, talk your talk. When it's done, you're done, sit down, and we're going to decide. And so this was in the museum. I do not know. And unfortunately, the caption does not tell me. It just says clepsydra. It's called the clepsydra water clock. Anyway, this is in a museum. This is in a museum that's stuff they found in the Agora, which is sort of like the forum, the marketplace in Athens. So I wanted to bring that because it's cool. But first of all, before we go on to Socrates and his visit to an Athens abortion clinic, which is very interesting, let us talk about Greece. Our questions are, where are our questions? They are on page 27. And to kind of fill in a little bit, I think I sort of filled this in for you. When the Peloponnesian War ended, Greece was in a bad way. There had been.
You too?
I have a tickle. There had been so much devastation, not a lot of lives lost. I mean, people did die, but it's not like World War I or World War II or like the American Civil War. You know, they didn't have guns and cannons and things, and so. Yeah, I mean, it was hand to hand. It was spears and swords. So the death toll, it wasn't so much, but the devastation and also just the morale. Do you know what I mean by morale? Yeah. Because everybody's a little depressed that things have gone so poorly. And so Sparta won, but nobody really won. Because Sparta was mean, if you recall. Sparta put tyrants in all these Athenian allied cities and in Athens, and punished people with death, political enemies, that sort of thing. Finally, in an unlikely way, Thebes rose up. Thebes had an amazing military commander, and Thebes for a while was #1 city in Greece, and attacked Sparta and beat it. Beat the Spartans in the neighborhood of Sparta, which was just unheard of. But then he died, and Thebes kind of simmered down. And while all of this was going on, north of Greece, there was this area called Macedonia. Here, I'll point to it and then we'll open, okay? The Macedonians were Greek, sort of. I mean, like relatives. In fact, once upon a time, there was a Macedonian who wanted to compete in the Olympic Games. And of course, the Olympic Games were only for Greeks. And he's like, well, I can prove to you I'm Greek. And he went back into some ancient history thing. He's like, see, we're descendants of the Greeks too. Like, okay, all right, be in the Olympics. So they're sort of Greek, but they're sort of barbarians, according to the real Greeks, right, that live in the south. Like, oh, those Macedonians, I don't know, they're not very cultured. And it did not help that the Macedonian king flip-flopped during the Peloponnesian War. Like sometimes he was on the Spartan side and sometimes he was on the Athens side, and then sometimes, the king of Thrace got involved and the king of Thessaly got involved, and he just kept flip-flopping. So they did not have a very high opinion of Macedonia, we'll just say. Yes?
Like Benedict Arnold?
Oh, a little, except it's like if he flipped back again or something. Do you know what I mean? It's just, they just weren't very solid allies. And so as Greece was sort of spiraling down the tubes, the king of Macedon was named Philip. And Philip watched this spiraling with great interest because he had some hopes and plans. And this is actually the very first question I asked you. Let me find the pages. I asked you, what were the goals of Philip of Macedon for his country? Dorothy Mills gave us a list. What are some of his goals? In fact, she said, okay, Philip had 3 definite aims. So this was an easy question to answer. Okay, create a standing army. You want to give us the next one, Emma? Or yeah, sure, if you want to.
To unite all of Macedonia into a real kingdom.
Okay, and then does anyone want to take the third one? Okay, beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, ladies. Create a standing army. What in the heck is a standing army?
An army that is always ready and not just Minutemen.
Yeah, because what were the Minutemen? Because Bryn's reading a book about American history right now, and it's bubbling out. What were the Minutemen in the Revolutionary War? Were they professional soldiers?
Yeah, they were just farmers.
Yeah, they're just farmers. This is the amazing thing. One of the things about the American Revolutionary War was that a bunch of farmers in what the English thought were a bunch of yokels, and a bunch of hicks, hid behind walls and trees and shot at the English, the greatest army in the world at the time, and beat them. But we didn't have a professional army. So yeah, a standing army is when you have people paid to be soldiers full time. My son is in the army, right? He just flew back, Sunday he flew back to El Paso. They're sending him to Poland on December 11th. He's going to be in Poland for 9 months with his tanks. And we have a standing army. They pay him to be a soldier. He doesn't have another job. They just pay him to be a soldier. Macedon didn't have one. In fact, most of the ancient world, well, most of Greece anyway, didn't have a standing army. In Athens, everybody took a turn fighting. In Sparta, everybody was, raised up to become a fighter, right? And so there weren't just like this group, there are soldiers, here's our merchants, no, it's everybody is a soldier. But Philip said, no. We need a crack team of soldiers who all they do is train and they're always ready to fight. Yes, Britt?
Romans had that, right?
The Romans, yes. Romans definitely had an army. But not in early Rome. After Christmas, we're going to leave Greece and go to Rome. Not literally, I wish, but we're actually just going to stay in this room and pretend. And so at the beginning, they had citizen soldiers, but certainly as they got bigger, they had a professional army. Okay, so that was goal number 1, standing army. Goal 2, unite Macedonia into a real kingdom. At that point, there was a king. Philip was the king, but there were a bunch of tribes. And the king tried to get them to do what he wanted, but sometimes they did, sometimes they didn't. It wasn't very organized. So he said, we need an organized country, and unite all Greece under his rule. Well, how do you think Athens and Sparta and Thebes are going to feel about that? Philip just wants, no.
Yeah, they ain't gonna be happy.
No, we don't want that at all. We do not want Philip marching down here and telling us what to do. His super duper long-term goal after those 3 was, having done that, there's an ing opener. Having done that, he intended to march into Asia against the Persian king. Oh my goodness, he's going to take on Persia.
No, that's not gonna end well.
Wow, he's going to take on Persia. And so actually, he had kind of a good persuasive, well, not plan, persuasive point, because he could come to the Greeks and say, hey, remember, because at this point it was 150 years ago that the Persians attacked. But they remember, right? It's like, remember the Persians attacked Greece? Remember when they burnt your temples, Athens? Remember when they killed and slaughtered and all those guys at Thermopylae? Let's go punish them for that. And he thought this would be persuasive. And by the way, I'll be in charge. See, that's the part that they don't like so much. So this was the ultimate goal. The next question I asked you, however, is what kept Philip from completing his plan. Yes. He was murdered. That ruins everything. When that happens, you just don't get anything done after the murder. You're dead. Yes. So, however, he did accomplish the first 3. He didn't make it to Persia. But Dorothy Mills tells us in 338 BC, in one of the decisive battles of the world, he fought at Chaeronea, and Philip was victorious. He had little mercy for Thebes. Some of her leaders were banished, others were put to death. A Macedonian garrison was placed in the city, and all Theban lands were confiscated. Athens was treated with greater mercy. On the day of the victory over her, Philip, now the rest of what I'm going to read is from a biography, right? Philip did not laugh at table or mix any amusements with the entertainments. He had no chaplets or perfumes, and as far as was in his power, he conquered in such a way that nobody might think of him as a conqueror. And neither did he call himself king, but the general of Greece. To the Athenians, who had been his bitterest enemies, he sent back their prisoners without ransom and restored the bodies of all those that were slain in battle for burial. And he sent Alexander his son to make peace and an alliance with them. Why do you think he might have been especially kind to Athens?
He's trying to get on their good side, maybe?
Okay, certainly it's good policy, right? It makes him look better, and maybe they'll obey him more readily, more easily, if he seems not mean. But what sort of people had lived in Athens? What sort of things did they love and do and make in Athens? Who's that guy we're reading a book about? Socrates and Plato, some of the most beautiful buildings in the history of the world. And so it wasn't celebratory that Athens was taken over for Philip. It was like, I have a lot of respect for Athens. Athens is the source of a lot of great beauty and thought. All right, so yes, then, as you said, he was assassinated, leaving his son Alexander, who was only 20 years old, to take over. We will read about him for next week. That will be our reading. But the next question I asked you, though, how had the character of the Athenians changed by the time of her battle with Philip? Were they the same sort of rough, tough, we'll put up with any hardship? What do you think, Emma?
Exactly. I think they might have gotten a little lazy. They preferred to like fight at a distance and force like big mercenaries and stuff to fight for them.
Mm-hmm.
And they weren't as prideful as they were back then. From what I'm getting.
Perhaps they had been humbled a little bit by their grandiose ideas, but exactly what you said. And think about it. If you hire someone, you pay them money to fight for you. Will they ever fight as well? Oh, okay. For example, this guy goes out and he's just paid to fight. We'll call him Joe. Joe is just paid to fight. He just wants a paycheck. Well, see, I would hide in the back and just collect the money. But then this is Jack over here. Jack is fighting because his wife and his children live in the next village, and if he loses here, the army is going to come and just like kill his family and burn his house. Jack cares whether or not they win. How much does Joe care? As long as he lives through it and gets his money, he's good. And so this is a problem. You know, all through history, countries have hired people to fight for them, mercenaries. We were talking about the American Revolutionary War. The English hired the Hessians, German mercenaries, to come and fight on their behalf. But the Americans were fighting for their homes. I mean, and also, they were traitors at this point, as far as England was concerned. It was like a death penalty thing. So Athens, the people who had once prided themselves on their physical fitness and their training and everything, were hiring people to fight for them. And they just stayed home, I don't know, and ate chips and watched Netflix. Don't know. They were not out on the battlefield. Here's how Dorothy Mills says it. A great change had come over her, it means Athens, since the days of Marathon and Salamis. No longer was it the pride of the Athenians that her citizens themselves defended her. And though the young men liked to boast that their forefathers had fought at Marathon, they preferred a more pleasure-loving life than was possible in a camp. And so they paid other men to go out and fight for them. But there was one man in Athens, and he thought that this battle with Philip was critical. We cannot just sit here and let him take over. And that man was Demosthenes. Demosthenes goes down in history as one of the greatest speakers in the history of the world. We have some of his speeches. But the last question I asked you was he a naturally gifted speaker, Bryn? Was he just, or was that not the question you wanted to answer?
That was it. I was wondering, do you know the
Would you like to tell us, Anne? What? Anne does not aspire to be one of the great speakers of the world. Like, no. Oh, was that your answer? Or, I thought it was your answer. No, I don't want to tell.
Yeah, or no, like,
Yeah.
he was not an actually good speaker.
No, thank you. Bryn and Anne are having a conference on this point. Very good.
Okay.
Bryn said, would you like to answer? And you said no. And so I thought you were saying, no, I would not like to answer. No, he was not a naturally good speaker, is the answer. You know, it's sort of like if I decided I wanted to be a professional basketball player. And my friends, you know, if they loved me, they would say, look, you're really short. You're not very coordinated. You're not athletic at all. I feel like you should find a new job. This is not for you. But nobody said this to Demosthenes, although he was not short. His problems were, A, he had a bit of a stutter. He could not speak clearly, and he also had been sick a lot when he was young. And so he had what they used to call a weak chest, which meant, I think, that he had a lot of respiratory infections and things. So he couldn't, those of you who have been on stage know, you know, rule number one, right? Except now, sometimes you guys have mic, like when my daughter did, there were no mics, you know, so it was just like, you've got to make the people in the back of the theater hear you, right? I'm sure you get that coached.
Yeah, I didn't wear a mic at all during the stages. I'm sure Olivia did.
Right, right. Just the,
So, yeah, I rely solely on projection.
yes. So, and you know, if you can't take a good breath and just really belt it out because it's hard for you to breathe, so that's hard. So this is what Demosthenes was dealing with, but for some reason he decided, I'm going to be a great orator. Great. So he would, they say, put pebbles in his mouth and then try to talk as clearly as possible around the pebbles to train himself to enunciate, you know, to speak very clearly. And then he would go down to the beach, and if you've ever been to the beach, you know that the waves of the ocean rolling in can be very loud. And so he would try to speak louder than the waves to practice speaking. And he trained himself to become a public speaker against all odds. Yes.
No offense, but you just spoiled the next question.
Oh, thank you, Emma.
Sorry.
I know. You know what? At least once every class, I'm going to spoil the question.
It's fine. It wasn't very important.
You guys will be disappointed if I don't. So Demosthenes became a great public speaker, and he said, look, Athens, we cannot let Philip take over. We cannot just sit here and pay people to go out and fight who aren't going to fight very hard and just let him take over. We have got to band together one last time as Greeks and fight. And he gave a series of speeches, and they're called the Philippics because they're all about Philip. Very clever name, Philippics. Although we still use this term to mean a series of speeches dissing someone, telling how bad someone is. So in Roman times, the writer and orator Cicero wrote a series of nasty speeches about Mark Antony. And they are called the Philippics, Cicero's Philippics, even though they're not about anybody named Philip. They're not his Marcuses or his Antonics. They're his Philippics. And they believed him. They trusted him. And here's a little piece of what Demosthenes says. What is the cause of these things? For as it was not without reason that the Hellenes in old days were so prompt for freedom, so it is not without reason or cause that they are now so prompt to be slaves. There was a spirit, men of Athens, a spirit in the mind of the people in those days, which is absent today. The spirit which vanquished the wealth of Persia, which led Hellas to the path of freedom, and never gave way in face of battle by sea or land. A spirit whose extinction today has brought universal ruin and turned Hellas upside down. What was this spirit? It was nothing subtle or clever. It meant that those who took money from those who aimed at dominion or at the ruin of Hellas were execrated by all. It means hated. Where are such sentiments now? They have been sold in the market and are gone. I wonder that you, men of Athens, who once raised your hand against Sparta in defense of the rights of the Hellenes, who spent your fortunes in war contributions and always bore the brunt of the dangers of the campaign, that you, I say, are now shrinking from marching and hesitating to make any contribution to save your own possessions. This is our personal and immediate duty, and I say that you must contribute funds. You must go on service in person with a good will. You must get rid of all excuses and all deficiencies on your part. You cannot examine mercilessly the actions of others unless you yourselves have done all that your duty requires. It goes on. You had a lot of his speech in your reading, and I'd love to read it all, but I'm not going to. He persuaded them. That's the good thing. They lost. That's the bad thing. And when they lost, they were kind of angry with him. Like, Demosthenes, you told us to go out and do this, and it didn't do any good. We lost anyway. It's your fault. You told us to do it. It's like, yeah, but we go down knowing we did our best. And we just roll over and become slaves of Macedon, of half barbarian people to the north. Well, that's the way it went. Battle of Chaeronea, 338, and Greece is no longer really Greece on its own. It's part of Macedon. It's part of a kingdom now. And the king is now dead. So Alexander, his son, is going to take over. For next week, I want you to finish chapter 18. So whatever chapter 18 was, I think it was called Philip of what was it called? Alexander the Great? Okay. So it's chapter 18, the chapter called Alexander the Great. I'm just going to call him Alex the Great because I'm lazy. And we're just going to read part 3. All right? It's the remainder of that section. We're also going to read dialogue 2 of our Socrates book. You probably figured that already. By the way, dialogue 1 was much longer than dialogue 2 and 3, so you've read like over half the book already, or about half the book. Okay, and we will find out more about this Alexander the Great. Is there anybody here who's never heard of Alexander the Great?
I've heard of him.
Do you know why he's great?
No.
Okay, awesome. We'll find out. Oh, you know what? Here's your job. I want you to tell me whether or not you think he's so great.
He's not great.
Well, don't decide yet till you've read, all right? We are going to do something completely different for writing for the next few weeks. It is going to seem odd to you. It is not going to be very many words. Like, you do not have to write very many words to do this assignment. But you're going to have to do a little thinking. I know, and Amelia's like, I don't want to think. There are many ways to become a good writer. Reading lots of good books is a good way to become a good writer. Definitely you have to practice. Learning the rules. Do you know the fact that we have certain grammatical rules in the English language? We have to follow those. But have you ever found an author that you really, really like to read?
Yeah.
Hopefully all of you have found like a book series or a particular author, and sometimes you know why. Like I love his stories. Like the plots are really exciting, or I love that kind of story where the characters act this way or that way. But sometimes we read something and it just strikes us as quite lovely or moving, but we don't know why. It's like, I just love that part. Have you ever had a book? Have you ever had a book where you read, like, there was a paragraph or a passage and you just kind of went back to it a few times? Like, I'm just going to read that again.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe not. You know what I mean? It's sort of like,
I've had a few paragraphs.
it's sort of like in a song. Sometimes there's a part of a song that you just love that particular part, like that piano solo or that whatever. I just want to listen to that again. And so sometimes writing is like that. You find this passage and it's like, that is just incredible. I love it, but I have no idea why. It's just good. But we don't know why. Sometimes it's actually because of the way they've arranged the words. But if we don't look at the way they've arranged the words, we'll never notice. So, believe it or not, in olden times, one of the ways people learned to become better writers was to imitate the style of another writer. You can do it two ways. Sometimes we just try to sound like them in general. That's not the way we're going to do, because that's kind of hard. And I said, write a book and sound like Socrates. It's like, I don't even know. I'm going to give you the easier way to sound like someone else, okay? And it is to take a sentence and write another sentence exactly with the same structure, but with different words. So let's do a.
Explaining the same thing, but in different
Yeah, well, no. But we're gonna do numerous of these. Like, we're gonna spend the next 20 minutes doing these. So, like, we're gonna be good on this. And I'm giving you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them, and I wanted you to do 3 of each. So you're writing 15 sentences for me.
Oh.
You're gonna write 15 sentences for me, and like some of them are really short. And that's it. And that you can't write anymore because you have to have the same number of words in yours as they have. Here's an example. Let's start with a really, really, really easy example. Joe likes pie. This is a very easy sentence, isn't it? We could write even babies cry. Like, that would be an even shorter sentence. This one has a direct object. So we have a subject, Joe. He's a noun, right? We have a verb. I'm going to put he's a noun. We have a verb. And then we have a direct object that's also a noun. Can you make up another sentence with a noun that's a subject, a verb, and a noun that's a direct object? Just substitute out.
Peter likes potatoes.
Peter, like, can we change the verb even? Peter enjoys potatoes.
Enjoys potatoes.
Now, let's stop here and look at these. Does everybody see these as basically the same sentence?
Yes.
It doesn't mean the same thing at all. We might say he hates potatoes, and then it would just mean something completely different, right? But it's the same sentence because it's got a subject that's a noun, and then it's got a verb, and then it's got a direct object that's a noun. It's the same structure. Okay, let's ratchet it up a notch. Oops, my marker just ran away. Where did it go? Okay. Fluffy bunnies. See, I'm so glad I'm entertaining. I'm not even trying. Fluffy bunnies are cute. Oh, aren't they? Aren't they? Okay. So, starting out, what do we have? We have a noun that's a subject, and we have another word with it. What kind of word is this?
Fluffy.
And what is it? It's an adjective. So, give me an adjective and a noun. We'll just do it this way this time.
Jumping? No, that's a verb. Mangy dog.
Mangy dogs. Mangy dogs.
Oh, I don't know. That's a ring.
Now, we're going to have to use are again because this sort of sentence has another adjective. Mangy dogs are crazy. Mangy dogs are crazy. Okay. It's the same sentence.
That went downhill quick.
Adjective, noun, that's our subject, linking verb, and another adjective that describes it. It's the same sentence. It means something completely different, but it's basically the same sentence. Okay. I'm sorry. Are you writing this down, Olivia?
No, I'm
Oh, okay. Let's try another one.
This is so much fun.
Luke and Leia
Get to go.
kill. This is not true. Met many friends.
I love Star Wars.
Okay, what do we got? What's our subject?
Luke and Leia.
Okay, we've got a double subject. So give me two. I need two nouns. Peter and Rose.
Oh.
Who are Peter and Rose?
I don't know.
Two people that just got married.
Okay. Okay, they're going to have to do something to something.
They
Killed,
a sheep.
killed sheep. Okay, but now
Many sheep.
what?
Many, no.
Killed lots of sheep.
Lots.
Well, let's we
Lopsided sheep.
lopsided sheep.
Lopsided sheep.
Holy. See, I have no idea what's going to happen when I put these on the board. It's the same sentence.
That is not the same sentence.
It means something different, but it's got the exact same structure. We have a compound subject, we have a verb, we have a direct object, and the direct object is modified by an adjective. Right? It's the same. Okay, let's do. Are we getting it? Are we following?
Let's do another one. We just keep doing them.
Yeah, let's do it.
Well, I'm gonna make them longer and longer. Okay, let's see. Mailmen
Mail. Mail.
deliver
Mail.
letters
Two people.
and
Cards.
and
Cards.
calm down. I'm crafting a type of sentence. I'm not trying to tell you something about mailmen. I'm trying to put together a type of sentence. And run from dogs.
What is going on?
Well, dogs notoriously chase mailmen, right? It's a thing. Okay, what do we have here? What's the subject?
Mailman.
What's the verb?
Deliver.
Do we have another verb?
Run.
Deliver and run. Mailmen deliver and run. This one has a direct object, and this one has something we call a what? My Latin students. Prepositional phrase. It's got a preposition and an object of the preposition. We got to make one. Okay, give me a subject.
Soldiers.
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 Fight.
Okay, give me two things soldiers do.
Take over cities.
Oh, I like that.
And
Okay,
kill.
okay. Fight. Wait a minute. Fight.
Fight enemies and take over cities.
I like it. I'm going with the Emma's because the take over cities, and you've got a prepositional phrase. Fight in what were they fighting? Enemies.
Sorry.
And take what? Over cities. Prepositional phrase. And it's the and take. They fight and take.
That escalated very quickly.
Technically, take over could be together, but technically, grammatically, over is a preposition. Take over cities. It's the same sentence structurally. Okay, one more. I'm gonna make.
A few more.
Oh, I know.
You like these?
I know.
But we gotta read Socrates, and he's crazy.
Some of these can't be better than this.
Oh no,
Yeah, you can.
I'm so glad we feel that way. Okay,
Sorry, Socrates, I didn't mean it.
when
I did.
snow falls from the sky, roads
Get messy.
are slippery.
And slidey.
Oh, slippery and slidey. Oh yeah, I like it.
And mingy.
No, okay, we're done. Okay. Now, this is kind of a little bit of a grammar test for us too. We have two parts. We have a sentence with two parts. Part of it is the when the snow falls from the sky part, and the other part is roads are slippery and slidey. Which one of those could be a sentence by itself? Yeah, this could be a sentence by itself. It's an independent clause, and we have a dependent or subordinate clause.
Or you could take out the when.
So these sorts of clauses, we can start them with when, where, since, after, although, So here's what we need to think of. Pick one. When, since, after, although, because,
After.
while. Okay. After what? After.
rains.
No, but they can't say that. We have to have a noun, a verb, and a prepositional phrase.
After warriors?
After warriors.
After warriors return from battle.
Oh, after warriors return, and let's say from the battle.
From the battle.
From the battle. Okay, now, so that's our dependent. Then we have to say something else that happens. And it has a noun,
Many
it has a linking verb, and 2 adjectives.
families
Families are 2 adjectives to describe them.
happy
Happy,
and joyful.
happy and joyful. Beautiful.
We're just gonna tell a war story here.
And so this is much more violent than I thought it was going to be.
I'm sorry.
It's all right. And so we have the exact same sentence. We have word for word. We have a subordinate conjunction. They call this after noun, verb, prepositional phrase, subject, noun, linking verb, adjective, and adjective. It's the same. Now, this is kind of fun. I'm glad you're having fun with it. But it also does something else. Sometimes authors sound so amazingly good because they're really good at building a sentence. And so I ask you, guys, we write papers, you write paragraphs for me, but remember what the building blocks are, sentences. If our individual sentences are lame, then our whole paragraph's going to be lame and our whole paper's going to be lame, right? And so that ing opener that I had you do, that's an attempt to sort of make a different kind of sentence, right? So here's what we got. I have 5 sentences. It says sentences to imitate. Each one of them I'd like you to do 3 versions of. Right? So it's like if we did another one of these. Like I did this one, and then I'd say, while mom bakes in the kitchen, children are hungry and what? And wild or thirsty or whatever. See? And then I do another one. After dinner. No. See, I can't do that. I need a single verb. After everyone eats from the turkey, stomachs are bursting and gurgling. I don't know. And then that would be another version. So that's the idea. Each of these, I want 3 versions of that one for a total of 15.
Yay.
Does that make sense to everybody? So I'm giving you like I did here, and then you have to say, what does it have? I need it to have the exact same things. They're not very long sentences, and I want to spend some time practicing our sentences and experimenting with different forms. So here, I'm going to one to you, and see, here's the test.
Enjoy chocolate, but however, my daughter prefers other treats.
2, 3.
This
My
is
brains
again.
aren't
Let's
working.
see.
Okay, why do I not have extras?
Because you don't have extras.
No, I mean, okay, so sometimes you know what I do. Yeah. Okay, just hang on. Everybody, just calm down, except I'm the only one who's not calm. Okay, it's not there. Just a second. Before I give up, let me look in all my papers. Sometimes they stick to the back. Yes. Did you have a question? Yes. Shh. Hey guys, can you stop talking so I can hear me? Yes. No.
For an example, most people enjoy chocolate, however, my daughter prefers other kinds of treats.
Mm-hmm.
Do I have to be the exact number of words, or can
Yeah. No, it has to be the exact number of words.
Okay.
I know that's rough, but it has to have, like, where if the original has a noun, you have a noun. If the original has a verb, you have a verb. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so here's the deal. I have 4. Bryn and Ann are siblings. They're going to the same place. So you guys just take 1. But if you will, when I get home, I will try to remember to attach. Like, I haven't sent the email out to everybody. I will attach this. And then everybody will get one. Because I've got to send one to the new houses in Luke anyway, because they're missing. And that's what I've done. I've put your pile on the Wednesday shelf, and I've put Wednesday's pile on your shelf. I'm sorry. Okay. Are there any questions about what I want you to do? Substitute out nouns for nouns, adjectives for adjectives, prepositional phrases for prepositional phrases, verbs for verbs. And next week we'll do some that are a little more complicated. Yes, ma'am?
Do we have to use the same, do we have to use the same punctuation?
Yeah, use the same punctuation. That's a very good question, too. All right. Are we good? If you start doing it and you're not sure what to do, what are you going to do?
Email you.
Yes, or call me. Who are you going to call? Mrs. Ferguson. And it's fine to do that, okay? Don't stew. I don't know what to do, and Mrs. Ferguson's going to be mad. No, she's not. What?
I was just at a house sample when we don't have your number, but
Yeah, everybody's got email, and I think everybody's got a number. And by the way, before we move into Socrates for the rest of our time, here, I just, does everybody's, I hate for you to speak on behalf of your moms. Here's what I'm worried about. We're getting into the bad weather season. And it is possible that we might have bad weather, and we might not be able to get out to class. And I need to make sure that everybody knows it in a timely way. And would you say email is okay for, do your moms like to get texts? Does anybody have a preferred? I don't know that I have everyone's phone number or current phone number for a parent, so I'm gonna try to send out an email, and you just might wanna like add your voice and say, Mom, make sure to send Mrs. Ferguson your current phone number. Sometimes people's phone number change. You know, I might have an old one. And I want to make sure that I can reach out to everybody and say, you know, but like by 7:30 a.m. on class day, I will pull the plug if it looks bad. I don't think it's going to be in the next couple of weeks, but it's getting into that time that you don't know. Okay, so if you could add your voices to mine and just remind your mother, look for an email from Mrs. Ferguson. Make sure she has your phone number. Most of them I do, but okay, let's talk about our Socrates book. What do you think so far? Do you like Socrates, or is he a little annoying?
He's a little annoying.
It's just a little annoying. Can you understand why maybe people were annoyed in Athens when someone went around questioning everything they did? Would you like someone following you around questioning everything you do?
it'd make for a good conversation. I probably wouldn't like it.
It depends on what the person.
It would get old after a while. And you know what? Often at the end of a lot of these dialogues that Plato wrote with Socrates, they often end, like that one that I read you part of Euthyphro, where he wanted to know what piety was. I don't know if that I brought it in and read it, but I told you the story of this guy who was suing his dad in court because the slave got killed. And at the end, Socrates says to him something like, oh, well, we've hit a dead end in our reasoning, and now we're just going to have to go back to the beginning and start all over again. And Euthyphro says, yeah, well, maybe some other time, I'm busy. And they leave. This is how they often end. People become disgusted. And Dr. Rex Herod obviously became agitated and disgusted, and finally towards the end he's like, okay, I don't know, I need a drink, I need something, I need to leave, this guy is crazy. And that was the reaction Socrates got from a lot of people. I marked a couple of places that I wanted to target, and this is actually a little bit of a lesson in logic. Once upon a time, everybody took logic. Like, you weren't an educated human being unless you took logic. It was always one of your courses. And And so, and it teaches us to think in an orderly way. So the problem that Socrates faces with Dr. Herod is Socrates says, what do you do here, right? And Dr. Herod immediately becomes defensive. Well, it's certainly not murder, whatever it is. I don't know, you're not one of those crazy pro-life people, are you? You know, and they're always after us. And Socrates says, well, I don't know. I don't know what you do here. And so he tries to describe it, and he says, but you can't call it murder. You can't call it murder. And so does anybody remember? Most of Dialogue 1 was examining the definition of murder, and they came up with a definition. Does anybody remember? It had 3 parts. Murder is... Does anybody remember any of its parts? Killing. An innocent. Human being.
But what is a human being?
That ends up being the problem, doesn't it? Now, I want to talk for a minute about definitions. Maybe this is something you never thought about. Because, you know, if you say define map, please don't, because we're all going to start talking at once, okay? Well, okay, I will let a few, but let's do it one at a time. How would you define map? Like you're looking up in the dictionary. What would you see? Map is what?
I was just joking.
Oh, okay. Would anyone like to make a conjecture? Map. I'm looking at the maps on the floor. That's why it made me. It's kind of random.
Well, maps have specific details. Maps are specifically made for plotting out details of a place to help you get where you need to go.
Okay. Maps plot out details of a place. Which is still plots out a place, but in that case, it's not to show you where you want to go. In the case of a weather map, it's to show you where the rain's coming from. So that shifts our, okay, so it's not just where we want to go, but it's still plotting out a place. What about, what about globes, Bryn? Globe wouldn't be a piece of paper. You see, and so when we try to define something, we start, and shows us something, but TVs show you something too.
Show us the world.
TVs show you the world.
A globe maps out what the world would look like. Maps zoom in on a specific place in the world.
Okay.
Details that you can't see from a globe.
Okay.
Like the terrain or the weather, etc.
Okay, and that brings up a good point too, because maps don't always show the same things, do they?
No, there's
Some maps, like there's terrain maps, there's population maps, there's import-exports of various places maps. So when we define something, it's harder than it seems. And so the ancients developed a system for defining things. They said, here's how we do it. We first of all pick its genus. That means what group does it belong to? And then we find the difference. How is it different from the rest of these? So, for example, what is a dog? See, that is a description, but it's not a definition. Okay, a dog is an animal that barks. That might work. Is there a smaller group than animal that dogs belong to? It's a canine. And how are dogs different from all other canine, like wolves and that sort of thing? What's different about dogs? What? They're tame.
Well, some dogs aren't.
That's true. But in general, dogs are domesticated canines, right? So they're canines. How are they different from the rest? They're domesticated. What is a, define a Christmas tree? It's a tree
That you decorate.
specifically decorated for Christmas, right? It's like all other trees in that it's a tree, except maybe yours is fake.
Mine's fake.
Mine's fake now too. And so it's decorated. What is a photograph?
Picture.
It's a picture, but so are paintings. How is it different from all other pictures?
You take it with the camera.
Taken with the exposure of light on a negative, so it reflects what was actually there in reality. Unlike paintings or sculptures. What?
Some paintings.
Some paintings, but we couldn't prove it. Right? We do a painting. Unfortunately, what I just said isn't really true anymore for pictures. I find this very disturbing that I hope you all realize that just because you see the picture of something doesn't mean it's real anymore. But for my whole life it did. You know, if there was photographic evidence, it was very hard to doctor photographs once upon a time. People did it, but experts could tell. And now it's getting to the point where it's difficult for experts to tell. So do you get the idea? So that's what they did here. He says, what is murder? Murder is a type of killing. But so is it when I squish an ant.
Yeah.
And so, but I don't call that murder. Maybe some do. I do not. Yes. Not watering my plant kills the plant, but we do not refer to it as murder. So this is the problem at the beginning. It's like, well, but what capital punishment? We don't call capital punishment murder. What? An innocent, right? So this one takes away killing that's not murder. Hunting. Most people do not consider, maybe some do, most people do not consider hunting murder. Most people, I think almost any sane person, would not consider letting my plant die because I did murder, all right? But murder is killing, and the thing that we kill has to be innocent, so that leaves out capital punishment. And of course it has to be a human being because deer are innocent. Bambi's mother was innocent. And she was killed. I know, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry to play that card. But she wasn't a human being. So does Dr. Herod finally agree that they're killing something there? Like, does he agree the thing that is alive and then it's not alive? Okay, that's easy enough. Like, he can't argue with that. There was something alive, and when they leave the abortion clinic, it's not alive.
But is it a human
See,
being?
that's the thing. And he asks, is it innocent? Has it done anything wrong? And Dr. Herod's like, no, it hasn't done anything wrong. So this, like Emma said, this is what we would call the crux of the argument. This is actually the Latin word for cross. It's the crossroads. It's the most important point. Is it a human being? And that's basically what the rest of this book is about. Is an unborn child not theologically, not according to the church, logically and scientifically, is it a human being? Because remember, Socrates isn't a Christian. He's a pagan Greek. He's not going to use the Bible, but he's going to use logic, he's going to use reason, and he's going to use all the science that we have learned up till now. So he says, if the fetus is a human person, it follows that abortion is murder according to the argument. Herod says, if, I think we're going to be led by the nose here. Abstract arguments can prove anything. Socrates says, good arguments or bad ones? Bad ones, of course. And Socrates says, and what is a bad argument? Is it not one, and then we get another list. Is it not one that either uses terms in an ambiguous way. I'm going to tell you what that means in a minute. Or begins with a false premise. I'm on page 23. If your book is just like mine, that'd be nice if they were all the same, wouldn't it? Or conclusion does not follow premises. And I would just like to, since this is basically what this whole book is about, a logical argument, I just want to talk about that for a minute. First of all, when we argue something, and by the way, I don't mean argue like have a fight. Like, should we have pizza or Chinese for supper? Don't argue, by the way. Just say, what would you like? And just be nice about it. But an argument in this case does not mean a fight. It means a demonstration. When you guys wrote me your paper on should Chevron and Amoeba flee, that you were making an argument. You were arguing a point, right? Your position is, yes, they should flee, no, they should not flee, and then you argue your point. It's an argument. And arguments work like this. Usually, we have two things that we know are true, that we say are true. And a third thing follows. I will give you an example of this in a minute, but I want to talk about, because it actually says, are we using ambiguous terms? What in the world? Does anybody know what ambiguous means? It's a very big word. It has a lot of vowels. Ambiguous. What does it mean? Ambiguous means we don't always mean the same thing when we say it. For example, I was trying to think of good examples. This isn't great, but the Bible says Jesus is the Son of God. Jesus is the Son of David. Do I mean son in the same way? No. When God is like only begotten Son. What do I mean when I say Jesus is the Son of David? A descendant. And so I can't just start using a word in a different way. So maybe someone says, schools are bad because many of the people who graduate are illiterate, which generally means you can't read. And someone else says, that's not true. Many people know how to read. But one of you by illiterate means you totally can't read anything, and the other one means you can't read at grade level, or you can't read adult material. And so you have to stop and say, well, what do you mean by illiterate? I'm trying to think of another one. I've used this before. If I say God is good and pizza is good, do I mean the same thing by good? No. I've used the same word, but it doesn't mean the same thing, right? So an example of an argument that would do that, I'd say, okay, this is actually not, okay. God is good. That's my first premise. Pizza is good. Therefore, God is pizza. Seems a little sacrilegious. There's various reasons why this is not true. But reason number one this is not true is because I didn't use the same word meaning the same thing. That's what it means. That's thing number one. So when we say killing an innocent human being, do we mean killing always the same thing? He says yes. By innocent, do we mean the same thing? You haven't done anything wrong? Yes. By human being, say, and here's the thing, what's the definition of human being? Have we used ambiguous terms? Do we begin with a false premise? In other words, if one of those two things isn't true. Well, God is definitely good, and in my opinion, pizza is quite good. So we're going to say that both our premises are true. but the conclusion doesn't follow from the premises. That's the one we broke. This is why that we laughed when I wrote that. Because we see that can't possibly be true. And it looks like, well, God is good, peace is good, so they're both in the category of good, so God. So if you think about it, here's good things. These are good things, all in the circle.
Good circle.
And we're going to say, pretend good means the same thing. And here's God. He's one of the good things. And here's pizza. It's one of the good things. Would it follow that they're the same thing? No. It would be like saying, this is the group of dogs. Okay? These are beagles. And these are chihuahuas. All right? Like, beagles are dogs, chihuahuas are dogs, therefore chihuahuas are beagles. Oh, I can't do that. It doesn't work that way. Just because they're both in the dog circle doesn't mean they're the same circle. You see, that's what this one means. Conclusion doesn't follow. The most famous, interestingly, and it's about Socrates, the most famous sample good argument is this. All men are mortal. This is always the sample when they give all students. Socrates is a man. Therefore, these 3 dots mean therefore. It's easier than writing it. Therefore, Socrates is mortal. This one pegs all of them. We mean the same thing by man and mortal every time. And these are both true. And this follows. Here in this circle is all mortal things. Everything mortal is in this circle. And here is man. All men are in the mortal circle, right? And Socrates is right here. Here's Socrates. Socrates is a man.
Oh.
So Socrates is in the mortal things. It works. It works. It follows from the premises. So this is Socrates' whole, actually Socrates, Aristotle, Socrates, sort of like grandson philosopher, because Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, is the one who wrote the rules for logic. But Socrates sort of pioneered the idea that if you say things that are true and you use the same words in the same way, you can set it up so that the third thing has to be true. But if you don't set it up in the right way, it doesn't work, like our beagles and chihuahuas. And so Socrates said, Dr. Herod, that's it. We need to figure out what makes something human. Now, that's a little harder. Define human being. Socrates says, well, years ago, they had one of these lovely genus difference definitions. Man is an animal, because we're in the animal kingdom. But how is he different from all the others? He's rational. Man is the rational animal. As far as we know, other animals don't do math problems and do logic problems and write books, and do calculus, whatever. We do. We think about things. So that was one definition they came up with. But anyway, Dr. Herod is not convinced, although he agrees to all of this with Socrates. He says, yes, I agree that. And he says, what is a human being, says Socrates. Oh, everybody knows what a human being is. I don't need to tell you that. Socrates, oh dear, our wisdom seems to be leaving us, but perhaps a few questions can entice it to return. Please tell me this. When you say that everyone knows what a human being is, do you mean every cat and dog and tree and flower knows? Now you're being ridiculous again, Socrates. I wonder which of us has lost her wisdom now. I wonder that too. And I wonder whether you really wonder. But if not every cat and dog, every what? Please bear with my foolishness for a moment. Every human being, of course. Socrates, every human being knows what a human being is. Herod says every normal human being is. Socrates, and are you one of those normal human beings? Of course. Then please tell me, since you know. Do not, I pray, withhold this treasure of wisdom from my eager grasp. Socrates, this is silly. A human being is what you see before you. People like us, like me anyway. I'm not too sure about you. But I did not ask for examples of human beings, which are many, but for the common nature of all human beings, which is one. A definition tells the common nature of a species, does it not? So please tell me what this is. What makes all of us humans human? This is exactly what happened in that Euthyphro story. Socrates came up to Euthyphro and he said, oh, Euthyphro, so you're charging your dad with murder for that slave? So you must know what piety is, what being pious is. Like, yes, I do. Tell me, Euthyphro, what it is. What I'm doing right now, that's pious. Socrates is like, no, I didn't ask for an example. What's a human being? Well, you and you and you and you. I want examples. Herod says, in other words, define a person. His first is, well, we are conscious. Can you think of anything that's a person that's not conscious? Anything that's conscious that's not a person? What's something that's conscious, like awake, but not a person? Animals. Okay, so that doesn't work. And let me up. Oh, then we get rational. We're a rational animal. So is the unborn baby, by the way, fetus, we don't like to say that word because we associate it, like with pro-choice. It's simply the Latin word for an unborn baby. Like it's just Latin for unborn baby. They don't call it baby because it's uncomfortable to call it baby. But so don't be, if I use that term or he uses that term, don't be thrown by it. It's just the Latin term for unborn baby. It just means before birth. So he asks, is the fetus rational? Herod says, do we ever observe a fetus asking questions? Socrates says no. And a human being is one who questions? Yes. Ergo, a fetus is not a human being. Therefore, abortion is not murder. What's the problem end up being with that? A human being is someone who asks questions. Babies who can't speak do not ask questions. Are they human? Herod says, Do you ask a lot of questions when you're asleep?
No.
Do you stop being human when you're asleep?
No.
Presumably not.
I do.
Although if you share a room with a sibling and you snore or whatever, perhaps your sibling suspects you stop becoming human because of the noises you're making. But in general, no. We say no. What about someone who's in a coma or like paralyzed and they can't speak anymore? Are they still human? Yeah. Do you guys see a problem? This is kind of advanced, philosophy for you guys, but do you see what might happen if we start saying that human beings are the people who can function as human beings? You know what I mean? They ask questions and they can take care of themselves and everything, because that leaves babies out even after they're born. But it also leaves out a lot of old people who can't do those things anymore. And it leaves out some people who are in wheelchairs forever and can't do those things. You see? This is why this is a big deal if we say what makes us human. Because if we start saying it's something like, well, you have to be able to care for yourself or think for yourself, there'd be a lot of people that aren't human, right? And it's really something we ought to be scared of because, Bren, this is back to your American history book. Maybe this is a little later in American history, but you guys probably know this. Black people were not considered fully human. They were 3/5. And they counted as 3/5 for population purposes. And the Constitution said, and of all other people, 3/5 for choosing representatives. And by all other people, they meant black people. And look where that led, right? The idea that someone is not human. So, this is a business. This is the big deal of our day, the big deal of our time. What do we mean by human? Because if my grandma is in a wheelchair and can't talk anymore, I don't want somebody insinuating she's not human anymore, and we can just get rid of her. Anyway, sorry to be. This is a very serious talk, isn't it? Okay. Socrates says, I learned from your science library that every person has a single, unique genetic code, just as everyone has a unique set of fingerprints. Is this correct? Herod says, oh, Socrates, that argument won't work. Socrates says, what argument? I'm only gathering data, not arguing yet. All right, one thing at a time. Precisely. Is that genetic code in every bodily feature in potentiality, or is it not? A program ready for a computer, so to speak? Everything from eye color to brain size to a tendency for warts? And this complete genetic code for a person, is it found in slime? Of course not. In a fish? No. In an ape? No. You see where we are going, approaching the fetus. But before we arrive, let's approach from the opposite direction, so to speak. Is this genetic code in me now? Yes. Is it in me when I sleep? Yes. Was it in me when I was a year old? Yes. 1 minute old? Yes. 1 minute before I was born? Yes. Yes, it is present from conception, Herod says. Socrates says, so the fetus has it all during the time between conception and birth. Herod says, that doesn't prove what you want to prove, that a fetus is a person. Socrates says, I only want to follow the argument wherever it leads. So the argument leads them to some pretty strange things. For example, if a human being is not a human being before it's born, Socrates says, does it have 2 feet? Well, there are 2 feet on the fetus, but they're part of the mother. There's part of the mother's body. So the mother has 4 feet for a while. So the mother has 2 heads. The mother has 20 fingers. And you start saying it that way, and Herod's just like, oh, are you kidding me? No, no. So every path that Socrates goes down, they get into the fact that you're going to have to call this a human being. And in that case, our killing an innocent human being would fulfill all 3 markers for murder. But of course, he doesn't want to go there, right? Because then he'd have to admit this is what he's doing. Do you follow the argument? Yeah. That this is what it centers on? And again, it's not a fault in this book that he doesn't appeal to God or the Bible. That's the point of this book, that even people who don't accept God or the Bible, it's logic. It's just reason. You can't even argue with the reason, even if you don't think that the Bible is true. So for next week, let me see if there's anything else I wanted to talk about here. I think we're going to look at what you're going to read next week. For next week, in Dialogue 2, well, let's look at how Dialogue 1 ended, first of all. 73. Oh, okay. We are all in sync. Yay. He says, I have an idea. I have a friend who is a philosopher. He's in town for a convention. Perhaps he could help me answer your questions. In fact, he's giving a speech tomorrow at the convention on just this thing, abortion. Could you come to hear him? We could talk afterwards. Socrates says, I would be very pleased to meet him. It is as I predicted in my apology. Even after my death, I am to continue conversing with the philosophers. I never dreamed that it included future philosophers as well as past. But then the gods always exceed our expectations. Herod says, I do not believe in gods. Socrates says, perhaps we can talk about that too sometime. Herod says, my friend is a professor in a theological seminary. He also does not believe in the gods. So they're going to go visit a philosopher who's giving a speech at a philosophy convention. And I just have to tell you, this philosopher's name is Professor Attila Tarian. And does anybody, okay, I heard an O. What do you think? Do you know a word that sounds like that?
I know
Attila
Attila.
Tarian. But it's a joke on a single word. It is this word, utilitarian. It's supposed to sound like utilitarian. And you might ask, what in the world is utilitarian? I will tell you. It means it's useful.
Oh.
We do something because it's useful. That's the purpose. We don't care if it's good. We don't care if it's bad. We care if it's useful. So a utilitarian might say, this is kind of an ugly story, but if, say there were a shipwreck, and we were all in a lifeboat, and the lifeboat was sinking because there were too many of us. It is dark. This is the sort of questions, this is kind of the scary area that this sort of philosophy goes into, though. I'm introducing you to sort of a scary area. Utilitarians would say, well, we'll just have to examine what each person can contribute to the group, or who's heaviest, and toss them over. And so like, say there's a doctor in the lifeboat. Well, we need to keep him because we might get hurt. We might need a doctor. There's a person who's skilled in navigation. Well, we have to keep him because we're out at sea and we need to know where we're going. And then there's Mrs. Ferguson. Like, chuck Mrs. Ferguson in the water. She does no good, and she could lose a few pounds. So they would, in other words, they wouldn't say what's right. Like maybe we could take turns. One of us could, one at a time, could float in the water and hold on to the side. Do you know what I mean? And we could take turns getting in and out or something so that we could. No, it's just like throw them over because they're not useful. That's a utilitarian idea. So when we see that his name is utilitarian, we suspect he's going to say, we should have abortion because it's useful. We don't care whether it's good or right or wrong. It's convenient. Does that make sense? Well, we'll read dialogue 2 and we'll find out. And we'll talk about it next week, why he thinks that it is convenient and useful to have just like unlimited abortion laws. Does anybody have anything, before I let you go, does anybody have anything in dialogue 1 that stuck out to you that you wanted to bring up or talk about? Are we good? Well, we're 5 minutes early, but I'm going to let you go. Write your sentences. Remember, they should have the same number of words. That's how you'll know if you did it right. Each sentence should have the same number of words as the original, and you're going to do 3 for each one of them. You're going to finish chapter whatever in Dorothy Mills, 18, I think, the Alexander the Great one, and read dialogue 2, and I will see you next week. Excellent.